Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a massive European gatekeeper that you've probably heard of, REACH. Now, if you're a non-EU manufacturer, you might be looking at this regulation as just a giant, frustrating roadblock. But stick with me, because today we're going to dig into the actual data and directives to show you exactly how exporters can flip this complex regulatory hurdle into a seriously lucrative market opportunity.
Okay, so here is our quick roadmap for today. We're going to cover what REACH actually is, the really critical updates coming in 2026, the risks of ignoring them, your exact step-by-step roadmap to compliance, and finally, the market solutions out there to help you pull it all off.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1. What is REACH? Let's unpack this core EU regulation and figure out exactly who it targets in the global supply chain.
No data, no market. Wow, that quote brilliantly illustrates the foundation of everything we're about to talk about today. It comes straight from the European Chemicals Agency, or ECHA, and it is literally the golden rule of exporting to the European Union. The burden of proof? It is entirely on you, the industry. If you can't provide the cold, hard data proving your chemicals are safe, you simply cannot sell there. It really is that black and white.
Before we go any further, let's actually define this giant acronym. REACH stands for the Registration, Evaluation, Authorization, and Restriction of Chemicals. But, okay, here is a massive misconception we need to clear up right now. REACH does not just apply to giant vats of raw liquid chemicals. Nope, it applies to mixtures like paints and cosmetics, and absolutely crucially, to finished articles. We're talking textiles, footwear, toys, furniture, electronics, the whole shebang. If your product has a physical shape and contains regulated chemicals above a certain threshold, well, REACH applies to you.
So, to stay compliant, every single manufacturer has to navigate 4 mandatory pillars. First up is registration. You've got to submit a technical dossier via the IUCLID database if you export over 1 ton of a substance a year. Second is evaluation, which is where ECHA actually reviews your data. Third, we have authorization, managing the phase-out of highly dangerous chemicals. And finally, restriction. This means outright bans on certain hazardous substances. Think lead in toys, for example. Moving right along to Section 2, crucial 2026 updates. Let's raise the stakes a bit and look at some new limits, because this regulatory target is moving fast.
So, the crucial thing to understand here is this exact number, 253. As of February 2026, there are 253 substances of very high concern, or SVHCs, on the candidate list. And listen to this, ECHA is actively expanding their criteria. They recently added N-hexane based specifically on neurotoxicity. Here's the kicker. If any of your products contain more than 0.1% by weight of any of these 253 substances, you've got immediate legal obligations to report it throughout your entire supply chain.
But if you think that's staggering, get a load of this number. Over 10,000. That is the estimated number of PFAS, you've probably heard them called forever chemicals, that are currently targeted by sweeping new EU restriction proposals. We're talking about substances used in literally everything, from water-resistant textiles to non-stick packaging and electronics.
Let's map this out on a timeline so you can see how quickly this is building. In March 2026, the Risk Assessment Committee adopted its final opinion supporting a broad PFAS restriction. Boom! Then, by October 2026, a specific ban on PFAS in portable fire extinguishers actually kicks in. Formal EU adoption for the broader ban, that's expected around Q3 of 2027, with the actual application starting in 2029. Let me be clear, if you wait until 2029 to figure out if your textiles or plastics contain PFAS, you are going to be entirely locked out of the market.
All right, Section 3, Risks of Non-Compliance. What actually happens if you try to bypass REACH and face these EU penalties head-on?
First, we really need to address a super dangerous assumption. You might look at your product, see a CE mark or RoHS compliance and think, hey, I'm good to go. But actually, REACH requires a totally different and much broader level of chemical transparency. CE marking all by itself, that doesn't clear REACH's chemical safety hurdles at all. And while RoHS only restricts specific substances in electronics, REACH basically governs almost all physical goods on the market. It's a whole different ballgame.
The penalties for getting this wrong are incredibly severe. Failing to comply is going to cost you way more than just taking the proactive steps to secure your market access. We are talking immediate customs rejections, your goods literally held hostage at the border, mandatory product recalls across the entire European Union, and financial penalties that can skyrocket into hundreds of thousands of euros.
Ultimately, you're looking at a complete loss of brand trust, which will get you completely blacklisted by major European retailers. No way around it.
Okay, enough doom and gloom. How do we actually avoid those penalties? Let's transition to Section 4, the Compliance Roadmap, and outline the exact steps you need to succeed.
Now, international trade faces a pretty major hurdle right out of the gate here. If you're an EU manufacturer, great, you can register directly with ECHA. But if you're a non-EU exporter, say you're manufacturing in Vietnam or elsewhere in Asia, you legally cannot register directly. So what do? Well, you've got two choices. You can rely completely on your EU buyer to handle it, which, let's be honest, leaves you totally vulnerable if they decide to change suppliers, or you can take control of your own data. You do this by legally appointing an only representative, or OR, who is based in the EU.
All right, let's dive into the actual steps to build this compliance bridge. Step 1 is conducting a really rigorous gap assessment and chemical inventory. You have to know exactly what is inside your product. Step 2, like we just talked about, is appointing that EU-based only representative. Step 3 gets a bit dense. You're preparing a highly technical dossier using the international IUCLD database, plus making skip notifications for any concerning substances. Finally, Step 4 is participating in a joint submission with other registrants so you can share data and, of course, paying your ECHA registration fees.
And here's something really important. Your registration burden scales directly with your export volume. If you export 1 to 10 tons a year, okay, you just need a basic technical dossier. But the second you cross that 10-ton threshold, you have to add a comprehensive chemical safety report. Cross 100 tons, and now you need extended toxicity and long-term exposure data. Basically, this means you need hyper-precise tracking of every single chemical weight in every shipment you make.
Right alongside REACH, we also have to talk about the CLP regulation. That stands for Classification, Labeling, and Packaging. To comply here, you have to provide a super strict 16-section safety data sheet. And guys, here is a massive trap that so many exporters fall into, submitting a poorly translated safety data sheet that doesn't meet those exact 16-section standards. It is one of the most common reasons customs will seize your goods. It absolutely must be in the official language of the destination country. No shortcuts.
Finally, Section 5, Market Solutions. Let's look at the expert assistance that's actually out there to help you execute this highly technical roadmap without, completely pulling your hair out.
Look, if all of this sounds totally overwhelming, well, you aren't alone. The source material points out that professional consulting consortiums exist precisely to handle this entire alphabet soup for you. They can conduct those tricky gap assessments. They can act as your legal-only representative over in the EU, expertly prepare those complex IUCLD dossiers, and even train your internal QA/QC and R&D teams. That way, your business is building long-term internal capacity, not just outsourcing a problem.
Looking directly at our source materials, they highlight a specific consortium designed to help Vietnamese exporters. This includes ISC Global for the international consulting side, Duc Lung Services acting as a local representative partner, and STCVN or Staunchly Vietnam. These entities basically team up to offer comprehensive compliance bridges, which lets exporters focus their energy entirely on what they do best, core manufacturing.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to chew on regarding your own operations. With 253 highly regulated substances currently to track and a massive restriction on over 10,000 PFS chemicals looming right around the corner, is your supply chain truly ready for the 2026 REACH reality? The European Union remains an incredibly lucrative goldmine, but only for those exporters who are prepared to prove their safety data. Thank you so much for joining me today, and hey, it's time to start auditing those supply chains.